Welcome to Fearless Finances, where I try to take the fear out of your finances. Last night, I was working on some edits for my book, which may never be published at the rate that I'm doing YouTube videos, to try to sell the book. It's a crazy conundrum. But anyway, last night I came across a section on investment strategies that I thought would be very, very, very helpful to people trying to plan in this Trump economy. These strategies are designed for you to be able to maximize your return even in a volatile market and an unpredictable market. Hence, the Trump economy. So hang on while we flip to the other side so we can talk about the 4 Ds of investing. All right, the first one is dollar cost averaging. How many out there have heard of this one? Kind of a typical one, but I want to make sure everybody knows about this one. Under dollar cost averaging, we make contributions to our investments on a routine basis. Monthly, weekly. This way, sometimes we're going to buy high and sometimes we're going to buy low. And it will average out that volatility risk. It also takes off the pressure of trying to time the market. For example, if we don't subscribe to Trump's Twitter feed or Truth's social feed, and it isn't even Twitter, it's X, they're all just make me crazy. You seriously make me crazy. There's just too much to keep track of. Anyway, if you don't follow Trump on Truth Social, and I don't even know what you call it when you're truthing, a lie, but this one wasn't a lie. So hard to keep track. When he said, now's a good time to buy, right before he put that pause on the tariffs, which wasn't really a pause. It was just a reduction of some of the ones that were crazy, except for China. That's really what it was. But anyway, I digress. When we're doing dollar cost averaging, we don't have to try to time the market. And it also means we don't have to follow Trump and watch a lot of his crazy truths that are lies. Dollar cost averaging was particularly helpful for those of us who lived through the lost decade. For those unfamiliar with the lost decade, this was a period of time in the stock market from December 31st, 1999 through December 31st, 2009. By the end of this decade, the overall return in the S&P 500, which was negative 0.9%. And a lot of volatility in the meantime. For example, in this decade, we had the events of September 11th. The market recovered fairly steadily because we saw Americans pull together. But then right after that, we had the tech bubble that burst. And then we invaded Iraq. And then we also had the 2008 financial crisis. Lots of volatility and very little overall return. But again, when we're dollar cost averaging, sometimes we're buying in when the market went, and sometimes we're buying in when it's going up, but we still get to average all of that out. Which brings me to the second D, which is dividends. A lot of times we pay most attention to the overall increase in the stock value. From when we bought it, to when we sell it, to where we are today, which isn't even a realized gain or loss until we sell. Everybody with me? Dividends, though, are the profits from the company that they choose to give to the stock or shareholders. After all, when you own a stock in a company, you own a part of that company. And if they make a profit, sometimes they decide to give that to the investors. So we can actually make money on stocks that have nothing to do with the overall value because we get dividends. Which brings me to the third D on our list, diversification. In some of my other videos, I talked a lot about just put your money in the S&P 500. If you can't decide what to do right now, just get started and put your money in the S&P 500. In Trump's economy, that may not be the best advice. The United States stock market will probably remain extremely volatile until he is actually out of the office. And honestly, going forward, because of this, the United States economy may never be the same. So, under this diversification umbrella, I recently did an updated video on how to invest in this Trumpish environment. In addition to moving to a far more conservative portfolio, which consists of, I believe, about 75 to 80% bonds, I also own quite a bit of foreign investments. It's my belief that a lot of the other economies of the world will begin to work together and cut the United States out. So even though a lot of the other economies of the world right now are having a lot of volatility in their stock market, eventually, when they get good trade amongst themselves, they'll thrive, and the United States economy potentially might not do so well. And again, I hope I'm wrong on this, but in the meantime, it does not hurt to diversify. Definitely diversify. And by the way, some of the other areas that we can consider diversification outside of this traditional stock and bond umbrella is we could do or throw in some real estate into our portfolio. There's equipment leasing programs. There's a lot of other things, but even as I'm naming off this list, I'm thinking about how difficult those investments are going to be in our Trump economy. It's not good. He's not good. All right, point number 4. And this one is super important too. Don't stop. Do not stop. Keep putting money away routinely. Do not stop on your financial future. And to illustrate this one, I want to talk to you about 1990. I know we're rolling things back quite a bit, but this is one of the examples I have in my book, and I think it's really important. In 1990, I bought my first home. And if you're unaware, interest rates were very high in the 1980s because we had to curb the very high inflation from the 1970s. Double-digit inflation, 1970s. Nixon. This is why I don't know why we have this man as president, because people really didn't have anywhere near as high inflation through COVID. Electing him because of 6 or 8% that turned around right away is nothing compared to the double-digit inflation that they had for years running in the 1970s. But I digress. So by 1990, interest rates were starting to come down from the highs of the 80s, but my very first mortgage was still at 10%. Yes, 10%. Before moving on from that, I think it's also important to note this. The very first house that I bought cost about $115,000, maybe $125,000, somewhere around there. It was a home on a lake for $125,000. No. My income at that time was like $55,000, $60,000 a year, which was considered pretty good because in 1990, you could cap out on paying into Social Security at $55,000 or so. And if you're not familiar with that, you only pay into the Social Security tax to a certain income level. I think right now it's like $140,000, $150,000, but back then it was $55,000. So my $55,000, $60,000 a year was enough to cap out Social Security, and the home that I bought was twice that, a home on the lake. Now, I was talking to a boomer friend of mine who's 20 years older than I am, and she said she bought her first home for $22,000, and she was at her very good job making $17,000 a year. Please notice that the home that she was able to buy for her very first home was less than twice her salary. Everybody with me? But today, Most millennials and Gen Zs are having to try to buy a home that is 4 or 5 times their salary. In 1990, I just kept putting extra money toward my mortgage to get it paid down, to save myself the 10% interest. But I thought to myself, because now what I advocate to people is to invest it instead. What if instead of paying down that 10% mortgage, I invested it instead? And please look at this investment chart, or I should say returns in the S&P 500. Now please notice, if I would have put some money away in 1990, that was a loss year, but in a way, that's good, because I'm buying stuff on a bargain. And then please notice what the market then did for the subsequent years. Look at some of these returns: 26%, 34%, 31%, 27%. That's crazy. I would have made so much more money instead of paying extra on my mortgage by putting it into the market. Now, I cannot guarantee to you what is going to happen during this Trump administration. As long as your investments don't hit zero, it's better to put the money away. And it's also good to be flexible. For example, 3 months ago when Trump first went into the White House, I had one investment strategy. Now I'm moving more into foreign investments. I hear Warren Buffett is holding a lot of cash. In addition to practicing these 4D: dollar cost averaging, counting on dividends, diversification, and don't stop. Don't stop. We also just want to be flexible. Look at where trends are going and sometimes move your investments. That's why I encourage you to subscribe to this channel so that you can get updated information and find out from other investors who subscribe here what we're planning on doing and ways that you can protect yourself and your future. If you'd also like this, it will help ensure that other people will get access to it. And if you've got any questions or comments for me, note them below. I'm always looking for good content to make sure that you get the information you want from this channel. And if you'd like to know a little bit about the diversification mix that I just recently moved to, I'd click right there. And then I'll see you again.